Nobody comes to the Father except me.
Bible Club. Eternal life.
He is the way and he's Jesus Christ's gift. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. He is the way and he's Jesus Christ's gift. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. He is the way and he's Jesus Christ's gift. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. He is the way and he's Jesus Christ's gift.
Good evening, everybody. This is Huge Pop from the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, and tonight I have a very special guest on the Wrestling with Purpose on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast channel. He's from CWF. He's been in wrestling for 8+ years. He tag teamed in the past with Johnny Lawless before the Bible Club. He's from CWF West Texas. He's known as the Buzzard. Trevor Cohen, how you doing tonight, my man?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on. So we're gonna call you the Buzzard. So everybody out here, he's the Buzzard.
It's usually just Buzzard.
Okay, not the.
Yeah, not the Buzzard. No, I'm not.
Okay, so maybe I got this all wrong. So
that's my dad, Mr. Buzzard. That's my dad.
So I just now that we're into that, I have to tell a story before we get into the questions.
Go ahead.
I was driving with my wife, and we were talking. She was asking me, "So who's your guest today?" I said, Buzzard. I said the Buzzard. She goes, "Ooh." So it's like he heel or is he face? I said, well, when I think of Buzzard here in Florida, I see them the ones that are circling the dead animals.
Yeah.
So I would say he's the heel. So explain to us the Buzzard or Buzzard. Was I on the right path or was I totally off?
No, I mean it's not too far off, I guess. I think Mike talked about last week how we don't really get to pick our gimmick. And he talked about how he was able to come up with a cool name that's able to like preach and go both ways, either face or heel. And I never came up with anything cool like that. I like to tell people I'm the Buzzard that Bray Wyatt tells everybody to follow, but I don't really have a cool story like Shiloh does about how he got his name.
Right.
But it's just what Mike assigned to me. He knew Bray Wyatt was one of my favorite wrestlers, and he was kind of going for something like I guess kind of a Raven kind of look with just the one name like that, or that's kind of what he was going for. And Buzzard is what he came up with. So
that's I'll be honest with you, to be thought of after one of your favorite wrestlers, Bray Wyatt, rest in peace himself. That was a sad moment in history in wrestling, and so
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to know. I'm getting off track, but I've always wanted to know that the best part of that whole thing with Bray Wyatt was that time when Undertaker was in the ring with him, and he whispered something.
Yeah,
man, I would have paid to be in that ear to hear what he said. So and nobody will ever know. Nobody, and I'm sure out of respect for Bray Wyatt, the Undertaker will never tell.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Whenever it was first announced that he had passed away, my first thought was, "Nah, this is a work. This is a work. I'm not buying it."
Yeah.
And sure enough, the next morning I woke up and I was like, "I hope it's still a work."
Yeah, man. This year was horrible with losing talent. We lost the Briscoe and we lost Terry Funk and Bray Wyatt, and it's just it's been a crazy time in wrestling. So.
Yep.
So, hey, Kim, how you doing tonight? My sister's in the chat, so they love the program. My mom and dad and my sister watch on every Monday, so they tune in. So, how you guys doing? So, Buzzard's in the channel with us, and so how did you first get started in wrestling as a fan?
Yeah. Well, as a fan, I'm probably one of the worst people to have on the podcast, just because growing up I didn't watch a lot of wrestling.
Okay.
I actually, my family didn't have cable very often. Every once in a while we had cable, but for the most part we didn't have it. So if I caught wrestling on TV, it was usually on like Saturday afternoons or Thursday nights or something like that. It would be on Telemundo. I'd watch Monday Night Raw on Telemundo.
There you go.
If I caught it, but I don't speak Spanish, so it was like I don't know what's happening here. But I had a lot of friends growing up that watched wrestling, and I remember we'd wrestle on the trampoline and stuff. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. But then as I got older, I actually getting into wrestling came because I wanted to get into ministry. And Shiloh, Mike Watt, who was on last week, he didn't really give me an option. he I like to say he beat me into working with him because he did. I said I wanted to do ministry, and he would actually drag me into the Wednesday nights with the kids, and I would tell him I didn't want to come, and he'd be like, "All right, well, you be there."
Yeah.
And he wouldn't take no for an answer. And then whenever I would tell him yes, he'd say, "You need to keep your word. Let your yes be yes and your no be no." And he'd start punching me and dragging me in there. And then I started working with him after a few years of him doing that. And whenever he started CWF here in West Texas, I was actually the first person to sign up.
All right.
So I was actually there the day that we got the wrestling ring. Mike was in Africa.
Okay.
And me and one other guy unloaded the wrestling ring out of the semi-trailer and had no idea what we were doing, but we unloaded it and put it in a room so when Mike got back, we could set it up.
That's awesome. I'll get to that that portion that you just said, because to me, it's very, very important that wrestlers do something like you did. Like,
Yeah.
like, it's not all about wrestling. It's about everything that goes up, and even the ministry, even the setup, even everything that goes into that. So,
Right.
Are you a fan? Yeah. Are you a fan now?
Am I a fan now? I'm off and on. Sometimes I like watching it, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I get kind of bored watching it, but I love going to shows. I love doing anything live, and so I'll go to any live show, whether it be a local show or some indie show, or if they're here live, I'll AEW, WWE. I don't care. I'll go see them. I like watching live stuff.
Okay, so
I kind of keep up with it enough to know what's going on.
Okay, so out of the current stuff we got, what would you say your favorite promotion out of AEW, WWE, or even an indie promotion other than CWF, obviously?
Outside of CWF?
CWF, yes.
If I'm going to go outside of CWF, and you said I can do an indie promotion?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm going to say Pele Pro out of DFW. My buddy Kyle Hessler runs that. He is a pretty solid, godly man, and he's just trying to run a good promotion the way that God calls people to run a business.
Awesome.
And he's a solid dude, and I highly recommend their shows.
They're
supposed to be coming back this year, I think.
I'll talk to you about that after the show.
Sure.
I have some thoughts. So
okay.
I'm the same way. I used to, when we started the podcast, we would talk about WWE, AEW. We'd do reactions and do reviews and stuff like that. It was like, it was okay, but it wasn't. It was more work for me than it was anything. And I was like, so I'm like, got burnt out real fast. And then I attended my first indie show.
Right.
And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, wow. So if I had to pick a favorite, I would pick an indie promotion over WWE and AEW. So it's
because those guys are busting their butt too, trying to make it really good
all the time, So I have to ask, you probably don't know this, it's a TikTok joke, whatever. Who's the greatest WCW champion ever?
Greatest WCW champion ever.
David Arquette.
David Arquette.
Yes.
I'm probably not going to go with David Arquette, but I would probably go with like Hollywood Hogan or Nash or somebody like that.
The TikTok answer is David Arquette. So
David Arquette is the TikTok answer. All right.
Yes,
cool.
There you go. Just a little bit of trivia here.
I didn't know that.
All right, there you go. So, what inspired you to become a professional wrestler, other than getting your butt dragged in by Shiloh to the ring and stuff like that?
Well, at that time, or by that time, we had started watching wrestling all the time. Mike and I were, because I was working with him, and I was really into. I was following Bray Wyatt. I think this was around WrestleMania 30. Which I believe WrestleMania 30 was the one where he did his triple threat, followed by another triple threat where he came back and won it at the end, which was insane to me. But we were watching every pay-per-view live. We were meeting at a friend's house, or we'd go to Buffalo Wild Wings, and we'd catch all the shows. We watched every Monday night, and so I was really into wrestling at that point in time. And so I was excited to actually be able to give it a try.
Okay.
And then once I kind of started giving it a try and actually getting in the ring, it was something that came natural to me.
Okay.
I'd never really been very athletic, and things that I've tried out either in athletics or even just other hobbies, playing instruments, things like that. It was not something that I was like, man, I feel like I can do this really well.
Right.
Whereas wrestling, I got in the ring and I just did what I was told, and it felt natural to me.
Okay. Yeah. Can you describe your training and the challenge that you faced in becoming in the training aspect of that?
Well, I would say probably just the cardio.
Uh-huh.
I actually, before we started training, lost 60 pounds
Wow.
to get in shape for the first show, or for not even the first show, just for the first training that we did, because
Wow.
we had a CWF show come in to announce that we were going to start training here in West Texas, and whenever that show came in, I wanted to be 60 pounds lighter, and so I lost 60 pounds. So whenever we started training, I was down that weight, and then that made cardio and bumping a little easier, and
Okay.
trying to learn to run the ropes. But that, and the thing that I still struggle with the most is doing flips. I'm 6'4" and weigh 300 pounds.
Okay.
Flipping doesn't really come very easily to me.
No. I can imagine that. No,
Yeah.
not at all. No.
So I struggle with flipping and rolling around and things like that. That cruiserweights really do better, but it's part of our training, even for us bigger guys. So
Okay.
having to get in and do all that stuff was a little difficult.
So we talked about Shiloh or Matt, right? Matt. Other than Shiloh, did you have any mentors, or do you still have mentors that you look up to that help you through challenges while you're wrestling, or even in the ministry?
Yeah, there's a few different guys that I would go to for sure. Especially if I had questions about wrestling. We have a guy that wrestles with us. His name is Paul, and he has been watching wrestling since he was a kid.
Okay.
And loves wrestling. And so I'll definitely ask his opinion on like telling stories and seeing if something makes sense, things
Okay.
like that. Because there's some of that stuff that I can do well at now, but even still, sometimes just having to think through it is a little difficult.
Right.
I actually had my very first wrestling match with Phil Bishop, who was on. I
Okay,
believe
yeah.
he was on the show.
Yep.
He's who I had my first match with, and so even though he's retired or has had his first retirement, I like to tell him,
Right.
he's definitely still somebody that I talk to. And then the other person that I talk to all the time is JT
Yep.
or Ryan Hart.
Yep.
Was he on here?
Yeah.
He was on
First,
here, wasn't he?
yeah, he's one of my first ones. Yeah. Great
Right.
guy. Great.
Yeah.
You named several great guys that you got.
Yeah.
I mean,
They're all right. Don't tell them I said any of that, though.
all right, well, I'm sure they'll watch it. So I just heard, maybe I'm thinking into this too much, but you're up in CWF West Texas.
Yes, sir.
Bill the Bishop is from CWF Rockwell.
Yes, sir.
I think you kind of called him back out of retirement.
I would love to see Phil come out of retirement. You can say it here. I called him out of retirement right here.
So, Bill, the Bishop, Buzzard says he thinks there should be a match between you and him, and let's make this happen, Rob Vaughn. Let's make this happen. Huge Pop. Here's a better thing. There's got to be a storyline leading up to it. Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast plans to be in Rockwell, Texas in December 2024. So a year from now, at the cage match. So there could be a build up to this. And I'd love to.
Plenty of time to come out of retirement.
Plenty of time to come out of retirement. Plenty of time to get in shape.
I like to tell him that wrestlers and rock stars all have more than one retirement. He could do another retirement.
So there you go, Phil the Real Bishop. Come out of retirement, unless you're too afraid of the Buzzard.
That's possible.
That's possible. So I think you told it offline, but what's the story behind the wrestling character Buzzard?
What's behind it?
Yeah.
That we actually did talk about that a second ago. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just
That's the name that was given to you,
It's
huh?
the name that was given to me. Yep.
All right. So what are some of your favorite wrestling moments that you've had in West Texas, Rockwall?
Probably. Oh, okay. So I actually have to make a correction from what Mike said last week because Mike lied to you.
Mike.
This is why he doesn't like doing these things alone. He needs someone to keep him honest.
I mean, before you go any further, are you wait? I mean, we're gonna call out another person on this.
I'll just call out everybody.
All right, there we go, man. You're gonna have a lineup. We're now. There you go.
So Mike and I actually did a storyline a while back where he won the championship from me.
Okay.
He and I were in a match, and we were actually tag partners at the time, and just happened to end up feuding against each other because we had a guy that got injured, and he lost his number one contendership, which put me up in the ranks for number one contender. And so he was my tag partner. He beat me, and then at the end of him beating me, I turned on him and beat him down and took his belt. And then for 6 months, walked around with the belt, telling everybody I was the CWF champion.
Okay.
If you remember, or I don't know if you're a big comic book guy, but one way that we kind of talked about it was Bizarro World. If you know Bizarro,
No.
he's like the reverse of Superman.
Okay.
And so it's just kind of this backwards world.
Okay.
And I called it Bizarro World, where up is down and left is right, and Buzzard is somehow the CWF champion, even though he never earned it.
There you go.
And so that was our feud, which ended in a last man standing match, not a falls count anywhere, which is what he said last week.
Okay.
And that was a good time.
Maybe that's what he wants to have another match with you at the Falls Count Anywhere match.
Yeah, he wants a falls count anywhere match. I'll do it right now.
Right now, there we go. Man, two call outs in a row, man. You're getting good.
That's what I go on podcasts for, is just to call people out.
There you go. So we got about 35 more minutes to call more people out. Now, don't call this. I mean, I'm going to ask you, which wrestlers do you look up to the most in CWF?
The most in CWF? Well, obviously Shiloh, because he trained me. So I look up to him. I value his opinion pretty highly. But don't tell anyone I said that. And so his is definitely up there pretty high. And I'd say probably Phil and JT are up there pretty high.
Okay. So now you were in a tag team with Johnny Lawless.
Yeah, I was. Those are my dark years.
Those are your dark years. So you don't look up to him that way then, huh?
No. He was a companion more than a mentor.
A companion, a companion more than a mentor.
I believe Johnny and I have actually been wrestling roughly around the same amount of time.
That's 3, bro. That is 3.
I'm calling up the Bible Club next.
Potential. All right. Do you prefer tag team matches over singles? Obviously, you like the Bible Club. You just said it.
I actually, man, that's hard. I saw that one whenever you sent me the questions, and I was like, man, I don't know. That's a difficult question. I do like being able to catch my breath in a tag team match.
Uh-huh.
But just 1 versus 1, it's kind of like the good old classic fight, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm gonna go singles.
Okay. What do you consider your biggest win so far?
Ooh. Gosh, I don't even know. I can't even tell you last time I won.
No, you're calling out 3 guys, and you don't know the last time you won. That's you got a lot of confidence for not knowing the last time you won.
I get cheated a lot. Refs are against me. I don't know my biggest win. I can tell you my biggest loss.
Okay, there we go.
My biggest loss, I would say, was in a 6-man, and it was against Tim Storm. So that's a pretty good loss.
Yeah, that is.
And I believe I got hit by Tim, by APOC, and by Ryan Hart. Oh, and by Chris Angel. I think they all 4 hit me.
Nice guys.
Yeah. So it was not a bad loss.
All right. What's the weirdest? I mean, so I don't know if this will qualify. Have you wrestled other than CWF?
I have, yeah.
So what would be the weirdest place that you've ever wrestled?
The weirdest place I've ever wrestled, I was thinking about that too. It's probably going to be in the back of a bar.
Okay.
Which I think for indie wrestlers, it's like, that's just normal.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, wrestling in the back of a bar was weird. I actually wrestled in the back of a bar for CWF.
Okay.
I wrestled for that promotion also,
Okay.
which was SCP.
Okay.
But I wrestled for CWF in the back of the bar. That was
Okay.
probably the most interesting, even with CWF, that I've ever done.
Okay. So now CWF and other promotions, what is the one thing or many things that puts CWF above at a different level than the promotions you wrestled with? Or is it just a different ball game?
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a different ball game, but I would say the locker room.
Okay.
And I would say probably anybody that's wrestled in different promotions and CWF would say the same thing.
Okay.
Because I've heard that several times. But the locker room in CWF is nothing like an independent locker room, where in the indies, every man is just trying to get up and above everyone else.
Right.
And when you wrestle for CWF, it's not like that. We're not trying to one up the guy that was just in front of us. We're trying to tell good stories, and we all have a brotherhood in the back. We're very encouraging for one another,
Okay.
and there's not often, it happens sometimes, but there's not often a whole lot of heat between the two,
Okay.
between the people in the locker room. Whereas in indie locker rooms, I've definitely seen it happen several times.
So I know that Lodi comes through there, Chad Lale. I heard AJ Styles came through there. All those guys come through there. Even Fitz, Rob Vaughn back in the back. How important is it for you guys, or even the younger guys, I guess, to stop, shut up, and just listen to the advice of those guys that have been doing this for a while?
Yeah, it's pretty important. I mean, this is why we have ring generals, right?
Right.
People who are in the ring that know what they're doing, that can take control of a match. And it's not even just in the locker room. Like, yeah, that should happen in the locker room, but also just in the ring, that should happen too. And that was actually one thing. Whenever the first time I wrestled at SCP, which is that promotion that's in the back of a bar, the first time I wrestled there, that was one of the first things that they were pretty complimentary of me on. I think I'd only been wrestling probably maybe 3 or 4 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a guy that was giving me a 10 punch on the top, and he told me to give him a move, and I was like, well, I could powerbomb you from here pretty easily. He's like, no, not that move. and so just listening to the guy in the ring that had been doing it longer, I had just made a switch. He told me to give him something else, and I did what he told me to do.
Okay.
And so being able to just kind of shut up and listen and not be so prideful and arrogant.
Right.
I don't think in wrestling you can do that, be a good wrestler and be that prideful anyways. I know it happens.
Right.
But I think when that happens, you start to see guys like this is Bret Hart being unwilling to drop the belt to Shawn Michaels, you know. Right. It becomes a pride and arrogance where it's like, hey, bro, the company is telling stories here. You need to be a part of the company that you're working for.
Right. Absolutely. And so when you became a wrestler, the excitement was, when you heard your music, you went through the curtain, and your energy was like, oh yeah. Is it the same then as it is now? Can you explain that energy?
It's definitely changed a little bit. I can tell you the first match I ever had against Phil, I was super excited. I walked out there, and when I got out to the ring, I'm looking around and he's nowhere to be found. And so all of my excitement just turned to immediate confusion. And I was like, I don't know what's happening right now.
Okay.
But when you first start wrestling, that's kind of how wrestling feels anyways. You're like trying to think through, I got to remember all of these different parts, and I got to know what my shine is and what's the heat and what's the cutoffs. And you're just trying to think of everything. And so you don't have a whole lot of time to process what's actually happening.
Okay.
Whereas the longer that you wrestle, the more you're like, I can just go out there and have fun. I'm out here with my friends. We're having a good time, beating each other up, and get to just entertain the crowd. I don't remember when that shift happened for me,
Okay.
but I do remember. I remember somebody telling me, like, just find one person in the crowd and work that one person.
Right.
And that was definitely helpful in thinking through, like, winning over a crowd, you know?
Right.
And so one time we're wrestling at this place, I think it was in Rice, and there was a guy in the back. I heard him over everybody for some reason. And he's just an old man standing in the very back. And I looked back there, and as soon as I looked back there, I just took in what I saw. An old man, big white beard. And I just looked at him and went, "Shut up, Santa Claus," and went back to wrestling. And that guy was hooked. He was in there. He came to me afterwards. He's like, "You made this so much fun." And I made one comment to him, and he was just invested.
Nice.
And
Yeah.
so I try to do that every time I get in the ring now. It's something I'm pretty conscious of,
Okay.
trying to engage with at least just one person, and you can do fairly well with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you guys are. I don't know if you guys travel much or whatever. So if it's not a road story, is there any funny traveling stories that you could share that you guys have experienced with Shiloh or whoever?
Well, can I call Shiloh out again?
Yeah, you sure can.
I'm going to call him a liar again.
Okay.
So I think last week he told the story about wrestling in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
And he got the guy jumps in the ring. Here's what he didn't tell you about that story.
Uh-oh.
He said, so this guy jumped in the ring and Mike chased him out. That all happened. Mike said he tripped over a barricade. He did not trip over a barricade.
Okay.
He tripped over two children.
Oh no.
He went to go jump and punch the guy. And as he went to go jump and punch the guy, there were two kids sitting right there eating like chips. And you just see as he trips over these kids, this kid is just like watching and just eating his chips, laying on the ground, watching this all play out. He's like, "This is the best thing ever."
Nice. So that is quite the difference. Barricade to two children.
Yeah, it was children. He tripped over children.
Children. Shiloh.
I watched it happen.
You heard it here on Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Shiloh lied twice last week. Now we need to have prayer for him because if he's going to lie like that, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Well, we forgive you. We forgive you. So, being in the Christian Wrestling Federation, what's the most challenging aspect of you as a performer and as putting on a show like that?
I can tell you, for me, I'm mostly a heel at this point. It's been a while since I've been a face. And so for me, one of the hardest parts is knowing where the line is and where not to cross, what lines not to cross.
Yeah.
This one will strike pretty close to you, since I know you told me you take care of a bunch of foster kids.
Right.
We have a group that comes out to all of our shows in the Lubbock area. It's the Boys Ranch here.
Okay. Yeah.
The Texas Boys Ranch. They come to pretty much all of our shows. And I didn't know this happened until I didn't put it together until later. But I have a friend that was at the show, and he was sitting there with his son, and there was another kid that was sitting right next to him. And as a heel, this kid's yelling at me, and so I just look at him and I'm like, "Where are your parents at, kid?" I didn't know he was one of the foster kids.
Oh no.
I put it together as I saw him walking out, like leaving the show with all the Boys Ranch kids, and I was like, "Oh," I felt horrible afterwards. I was like, "Oh man, I'm such a jerk." Well, then we actually went and wrestled at the Boys Ranch, and I was like, I gotta find something else to say. I don't know. Because that thought was just running through my head the whole time. I was like, I'm just a horrible person, and it's going to make for being a good heel, and everybody's going to hate me. But I feel like a horrible person.
That's a good story.
Yeah.
What advice would you have to give an up and coming wrestler, like a young person coming in and saying, "Hey, I want to do this"?
Wrestling with CWF or wrestling in general?
In general.
I think probably the first thing I would say is, like we talked about earlier, like being willing to just listen. And another thing too, I remember Mike saying this whenever we first started doing ministry, because we started in kids ministry. I didn't want to be in kids ministry. I had no desire to be in there. And we used to tell everybody that worked with us in kids ministry the same thing. You need to get over yourself.
Okay. Yeah.
And I would say wrestling is a lot of the same, because you're going to get up in the ring and you're going to have to lose. And you're going to have to be fine with that. Being willing to put somebody else over is a big thing. And I think it's one thing that separates some of the good wrestlers from some of the great wrestlers, is that they're actually willing to make someone else look good.
Right.
In spite of themselves.
Right.
Because every time that I would go wrestle with somebody, what would just make me so mad is they just want to get in all of their stuff and they want to look good and they want everyone to think they're the best wrestler in the world.
Right.
And I think the best wrestler in the world is the one that's willing to make the other guy look good.
Right. And I got to give my hats off to Chris Jericho. He's one of the best at doing that. You know,
right.
The Miz, I can't stand him, man. I can't stand the character. I think it's ridiculous. But he puts people over. You know,
yeah, he's
okay. He's okay with it.
Yeah, he gets paid a lot of money to do it.
Yeah, so I mean,
and so just being willing to do that, getting over yourself.
I'm gonna go back to the topic that we talked about, where how it's hard to, in the Christian Wrestling Federation, to know where your boundaries are, what you cannot say, and that's the situation that when about the foster kids. So that's got to be a tough situation as a heel, especially.
Yeah.
To go, oh, what's too far?
Yeah. Here's the nice thing I think that we have an advantage of with being in the Christian Wrestling Federation. We're not wrestling in the back of a bar. We're typically wrestling for a lot of kids. And even sometimes we're wrestling for a lot of fans that aren't really wrestling fans.
Okay.
And so I know, like, one of our biggest shows we have is when we get to wrestle at like a campground, and you get 150 kids in a room. It sounds like it's like the biggest show we've ever had. It sounds huge. You get 150 kids in there. And so kids are easy to make mad. You can make kids mad real easy.
Right.
And even just people who aren't really wrestling fans who know they're coming to a Christian show, you can push the boundary a little bit, and they'll be like, I can't believe this is the Christian Wrestling Federation. That kid just called me, or that guy just called me an idiot, or just something like that. I mean, we really, we do really well at just cheap heat, things that are really easy to make people mad, and we have a good time.
All right. So do you ever get fans that come to a Christian wrestling show that don't care, that don't care, but they're just freewheeling to just speak how they want to speak, like they do at a regular wrestling show? And how do you guys maintain the crowd control, composure if somebody's like going off, like if you was at like a XIW or whatever?
Yeah. With the fans, right?
Yeah.
So we had the first thing that we have is we'll tell, like, if we're going to wrestle at a church, we'll tell people at the church, like, hey, be on watch for this, kind of be a little bit of a bodyguard. When we first started, we actually had a couple of guys that weren't ready to wrestle yet that acted as bodyguards for the show. We usually always have a barrier set up at our shows anyways. In Rockwall, I don't think in Rockwall we have a barrier set up, just because I don't think we'd be able to set up a barrier that way. But I know we try to set up a barrier at all of our shows that we do. But also just, so yeah, I think those two things, having people ready and stationed and having a barrier. But like, I know one time we had a show where we wrestled in a small town just outside of Lubbock, and we had a kid that got up in Mike's face, and we knew going into the show, like, this kid struggles to separate reality from fiction.
Okay.
And so he was super into it, and he was bowed up and ready to fight Mike. And some of the parents had to come in and get him like, hey, dude, you need to calm down.
Okay.
But then you go to like when we wrestled in Puerto Rico, that was kind of an interesting thing because those kids are wrestling fans and they're not Christians.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so we had kids in Puerto Rico that were flipping us off. They were using their middle finger, like cutting across their throat with a knife,
Oh,
pointing
wow.
at us like they would shoot us. I'm like, if this kid had a gun, he would shoot me right now. And it wasn't even, I didn't even say anything bad to get the kid angry at me, but he hated me. And I was like, this is nice healing work right here.
Right.
You're getting
So
some good heat here.
So you mentioned Puerto Rico. Shiloh mentioned Mexico last week, and et cetera, et cetera. So, what has been the not scariest, but what has been the most intense place that you've wrestled, like in Puerto Rico or something like that?
Wrestling at Vigirio Davila in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
So this is where Mike punched the drug dealer.
Okay. Yes.
So I don't know how much, I can't remember how much he explained, but there was one entrance and one exit there.
Okay.
And we had to go through this maze of cars to get to where the ring was being set up. And when we get there, all of these people show up. I mean, there's a ton of people. The guy that actually jumped into the ring was, we found out later, one of the drug lord's sons.
Yes.
And like a 17-year-old drug lord's son. It was crazy. But as we're leaving, this was the most intense moment. Was as we're leaving the night that Mike punched that drug dealer, we're going to walk out, and where the entrance / exit was at, there's these two guys carrying like Uzis.
Oh shoot!
And so as we go to leave, this guy with this fully automatic weapon stops us, and I was like, "Oh, we're gonna die." And we went from like talking and having a good time in the car to just dead silence. Like you could have heard a pin drop in that car. And we thought he was fixing to come get in the car or do something. He just wanted to cross the road.
Oh wow!
He stopped us so that he could cross the road.
Thank you very much.
Whoo! It was tense in that car when that happened.
I bet.
And we thought for sure, we were like, it was him. He punched the kid, not us. It was him. Like, we're gonna turn you over right now.
And Shiloh, they're blaming you for a lot of things. Buzzard says you lied twice, and now he's blaming you for almost getting shot in Puerto Rico.
These are all things I say to his face, so
all right, there
it's
you go.
fine.
It's fine. So, outside of wrestling, what do you do?
So my shoot job is I work for my dad full time doing plumbing.
Okay.
And then I serve as the executive pastor for our church here in Tahoka.
Okay. So the wrestling and the ministry, how has that part of your life impacted your personal growth?
So in West Texas, the way that we've talked about CWF is kind of a twofold ministry. Mm-hmm. It's on one side, it's doing the shows and being able to share the gospel using wrestling.
Right.
But then on the other side of that, it's also the discipling of men, because we are a men's ministry. We don't have women that wrestle with us.
Right.
One, because that's awkward, and two, it's because when we get done, we have our Bible study after training on Monday nights, and it's required to go to, and we talk about some pretty deep stuff, and especially once we get into talking about each other's lives and confessing sin and calling men to repentance. Like, it's a pretty ironing, sharpening iron moment when we get into Bible study. And so that part of it is actually the part that I like the most. I lead Bible study on Monday nights.
Okay.
And so we get to go in the ring and make each other better in the ring, and then get out of the ring and make each other better through study of the Word and Bible study. And so those are things that I enjoy.
Awesome, man. So you must live close to Shiloh, because he said that the church or whatever is right down the road from him.
Yeah, I can actually see Shiloh's house from my apartment.
Okay, cool. family, how's your family support you as far as the wrestling, the ministry? Are they?
I don't know that they were too excited about it at first. I remember my dad came to training one night, and it was actually my chop night. It was I was graduating, and he was there as they chopped me 3 times each.
Holy
And
smokes!
he,
That's not a great graduation, in my opinion. That would have hurt.
That's part of wrestling.
Nope.
That's honestly that's part of the pride side, like getting over the pride and knowing how someone's going to react to pain and things like that. But yeah, that's chop night for us. And so my dad was there, and he had to leave the room. But I mean, they come to my shows. They went and saw me when I wrestled at the bar a couple times, and they come to some of my shows whenever we're in Lubbock. And so they're pretty supportive. But as far as like a wife or anything like that, it's just me. So if you have any single ladies listening,
All right,
you let them know. Buzzard's available, single and
right.
ready to mingle.
All right. Man, chop night, bro.
Yeah, chop night. I have a goal on chop night.
Okay.
Whenever we have a guy that graduates now, my goal on chop night is to make him bleed.
And then there's these people that fans that say wrestling's fake.
Yeah.
I don't care if they might be choreographed, but fake. Not when you make people. Not when you chop. Not when you go through graduation. Have chop night.
No.
So how many guys are there to chop? Like you taught me 3 times each. What is that? It was like 6 different guys. Or 10 different guys.
Funny story. Whenever I graduated, it was 1, 2 guys. Because I was one of the first people to sign up.
Lucky one, right?
And, yeah, we had a guy there that night that had already graduated, and so I had to be chopped by 2 people. Well, another guy graduated the same night I did.
Yeah.
And I was gonna let him go first, and he didn't want to go first, so I went before him.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had graduated now, he gets chopped by 3 people.
Nice.
He thought I did him dirty, but I followed the rules. I would have let him chop me if he had gone first, but that's not what happened.
You did him dirty. I'm just saying here. That's. I mean, but you did offer him to go first.
I did. No. I tried to let him go first, and he didn't take it. So.
What a guy! So it's not your fault.
It's not my fault.
Is he still wrestling with CWF?
No, he doesn't.
He probably said, no, it's your fault. So fans in CWF, your interactions at CWF, it appears that they'd be in a different style. I mean, at an independent show, fans are, they like the merch tables, they like the meet and greets and stuff like that. And my favorite part of CWF is at the end when you guys come in the ring and it's prayer time and it's lesson time, et cetera, et cetera. To me, that's great fan interaction. So how important are the fans to you? And do you have merch that you sell? Do you guys do that at CWF?
Yeah, we have, especially in Rockwall, they have a lot more merch than what we do. They have a bunch of CWF shirts and hats and stickers and all kinds of stuff. We have some shirts and some beanies that we sell, and then we actually have some baseball cards, that we sell too. You can just buy a pack of baseball cards and we'll sign them for you. But really, I think the bigger reason we sell the merch, because we don't it's not like we make a lot of money on that stuff.
Right.
But we'll sell it, and usually we'll tell people like I'm only going to sign CWF things so that people aren't bringing like a baby to me and asking me to sign a baby.
Right.
But usually the places that we're wrestling in, they may or may not like wrestling. It's just like, for example, when we do shows here in Tahoka, we're in a pretty impoverished area. These kids don't get to go see stuff like this very often.
Right.
And so they're excited that somebody's actually coming to see them. And it's a show that they can go to for free.
Right.
And so they're excited and they love it.
All right.
So
I'm gonna have to get a hold of Rob Vaughn and Shiloh, because I'd love to have like a poster of CWF Rockwall, CWF West Texas, and just have you guys sign that for me so I can put it in behind me. And
sure.
You guys are. I honestly say this: you guys are my favorite promotion. You guys are great people, and one of my favorite nights of the week is Monday night, so I can do this. So
Right.
I do have kids and they have questions. So
That's fun. Let's hear them.
favorite movie?
Ooh. For the longest time, it was Star Wars.
Okay.
But I know that's like a bunch of movies. And so I'm still gonna stick with Star Wars. I don't really like the newer ones that much, but I
Okay.
do like Rogue One a lot.
Rogue One. Okay.
Seeing Vader in Rogue One was so cool.
Yeah. Favorite
Like-
TV show?
Favorite TV show? The Office.
Office. Favorite food?
Favorite food? Ribeye.
Ribeye. We made homemade pizzas tonight. So my question is, does pineapple belong on pizza?
Never.
Never.
Did you put pineapple on your pizza tonight?
I do not, but a couple of my kids did. I hate pineapple on pizza. I mean, pineapple needs to be in. My grandma used to make sweet and sour meatballs, and she put pineapple, green pepper, sweet and sour pickles in the sauce. And it was pretty good. But no, I don't know. I'm not a pineapple fan normally.
Yeah.
Favorite cartoon?
Favorite cartoon? Oh man, I haven't watched a cartoon in forever. Let's go Phineas and Ferb. It's a fun little show.
You play video games?
When I can.
What's your favorite?
Probably Shadows of Mordor.
Okay. I talk about you guys in Christian Wrestling Federation, and one of my kids, she wants to know, what's your favorite Bible verse?
My favorite Bible verse?
Yes.
Let's go Psalm 110.
Okay.
Psalm 110 says Christ must reign until he's made all of his enemies a footstool.
Okay. Awesome. A lot of my other kids, they love Roman Reigns. So do you acknowledge the tribal chief?
No.
Okay.
Christ, you tell your kids Christ is Lord.
No, I do. They wanted to ask that question. So
Yeah. I get it.
but you're right. Christ is Lord. So
I don't acknowledge the tribal chief because Christ is Lord.
There you go. You heard it right here. You mentioned, you said a statement about brotherhood. How important is brotherhood in wrestling? And I know it's very important in the ministry.
Yeah.
How important is brotherhood to you?
It's really important. I read a book. Oh man, what was that book called? I can't remember the name of it now off the top of my head, but I read a book this last year that just kind of looked at friendships throughout history. Yeah. And loneliness amongst men is incredibly high right now. It's incredibly high. And it's kind of sad that it is so high. And so this book, it looks at throughout history some of the big name friendships that we see throughout history. And so it just looks at different people. Well, one of the people that it looks at is actually an example of a bad example. And so he looks at President Nixon, and he talks about during the whole Watergate scandal with President Nixon, how there was not a single person that was willing to vote in his favor. And the reason why is because he had no friends. Wow. He was unwilling to make friends where he worked. And it just kind of went to show like how important it was to have friends. Whether or not what he did was right or wrong is neither here nor there. But the fact that he had nobody to be on his side. When we have a brotherhood, we have that somebody that's on your side. We talk about somebody that knows your hopes, dreams, and fears, and is able to help you achieve them. Yeah. And so it's important that we have that for sure.
Now, do you have a list of your brothers that you'd call be part of your brotherhood?
Yeah. So the two pastors that I serve with, Mike, who's Shiloh, and we got another one named Jamie. We meet every Monday night after wrestling, and we try to meet up even more than that, but for sure every Monday night.
Awesome, man. You also mentioned paying dues. So what does that mean to you, paying dues back to the business or back to CWF or whatever?
I think especially for just wrestling, I mean, it's just part of I think it's part of that killing that pride. And in ministry, it looked like being willing to go clean toilets and being willing to go do janitorial things and being willing to serve, and then just slowly moving up in that. In wrestling, it's kind of the same, honestly. It may not be cleaning toilets, but it's being willing to set up the ring, being willing to sweep out the ring or sweep around the ring and take care of the things that we have. I think a lot of it is just that killing pride. But it's weird. Like whenever I started, I was excited about that. We unloaded that wrestling ring off the truck, and I was like, let's do this. Let's get it over with. I'm ready to set this thing up and body slam somebody on it already.
Right. No, you find a lot of non-brotherhood in the independents a lot of times.
Yeah.
A lot of those guys come in and, all about themselves and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
If you had to wrestle anywhere else besides CWF, is there a bucket list? Would you say, yeah, I'd love to go there?
Used to, I would have probably said NXT.
Okay.
That was when NXT was big. You had Bo Dallas and Seth Rollins and all of the guys that are main roster now wrestling NXT. That would have been cool to go to. But now, at this point in my life, I'm not really interested in moving up.
Okay.
And doing anything other than serving in the ministry. I'd wrestle for Kyle over at Pele, but that's about it.
Okay. So CWF, let's talk about CWF. So do you have any dream opponents other than the ones you already called out that you would want to, you're calling out people. What's your dream opponent?
My dream opponent, let's see. I've never wrestled him, but I did get in the ring with him one time. Just because I wanted to lock up with him, but I'd wrestle Fitz.
You would?
Yeah. There's not a lot of people that are bigger than me, and so wrestling somebody that's bigger than me, I think would be a fun match.
All right, so
I would cry probably, but it'd be a fun match.
Since the beginning, we called out Shiloh, Phil the Bishop, Fitz, and I thought there was another one.
I think I called out Johnny at one point.
Johnny Lawless, yes.
You know what? Bring me the Bible Club 2 for 1 right now.
Bible Club 2 for 1. Dudes, you heard it. Here on the Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast, Bible Club needs to make a trip down to West Texas and take care of the Buzzard, I guess. What was your tag team experience like with Johnny Lawless?
I had a great time. I drove to Dallas every month for a wrestling show, and had a good time. How did we end that feud? How did we end our tag? I remember whenever we ended, I was pretty upset. I was moving to Tahoka. I was moving out of my dad's house, and so I didn't have the money to keep driving up there every month. And so that's why I had to stop, was just because I was trying to get my own place and pay for bills and be an adult, things like that.
Right.
And so that's the only reason I stopped going up there every month. But I think Johnny and I were tag partners for about a year. So I had a pretty good run with Johnny, and it was fun. We had a good time. We beat up a lot of people. Got to wrestle some big name people while I was over there, which was fun.
Okay.
Mostly getting to wrestle Barrett. I got to wrestle Barrett whenever I was going over there every month.
Awesome.
And so I had a good time doing that.
What other big names did you wrestle?
Let's see. I guess just Barrett.
Okay.
Everybody else I think I wrestled were just CWF guys.
Okay.
Phil and JT and Kyle.
Guys, I'm gonna cut this guy off. You guys are big guys too, okay?
No, they are. They're big guys. Kyle is also a big guy. He's actually Kyle, Akil Blackheart, is what we call him when he wrestles with us. He and I actually had a feud in West Texas for a little while.
All right.
And he likes to do stupid things, and I like to do those stupid things to him.
All right, there you go. This is this podcast didn't go. It's it's better than I thought because, man, you're calling out all kinds of people.
That's what I'm doing. Yep.
So here you go. What's your thoughts on the Bible Club?
What's my thoughts on the Bible Club?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Let them come get me.
let them come get you. Future goals at CWF.
Future goals at CWF. Man, I haven't even thought about that. What my future goals are for CWF. We in West Texas, we want to grow. We want more
Yeah.
people, and
Yeah.
so if we could train up more people, if I could find me another big guy, to come and try to beat me up, that'd be fun. I'd have a blast doing that. I know coming up on 10 years this next year, 10 years wrestling, I should probably at some point in time start looking for somebody to replace me. I know I don't plan on retiring anytime soon. I like to tell Mike I have to wrestle at least as long as he does. So
Right.
I at least got another 10 years for me.
All
But
right.
at some point I'm going to need to replace myself.
All right.
And so
Yeah.
probably
Very
that.
That's very humbling. I had mentioned to Shiloh last week that what I think would be cool would be a West Texas Rockwell invasion angle somehow.
It's definitely been talked about several times.
That'd be cool.
We had one, I think we had one show a while back where we actually had a good number of guys show up in DFW. And so, but we didn't quite get the invasion angle that we were kind of wanting, but it would be fun to do.
I think you can preach on that really I think that it'd be cool.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about you guys, because you turn your storylines into you have a purpose, and it's just so cool. So I want to be honorable of your time. It's 56 minutes long into the thing. So I love to wrap it up with I like wrapping up every CWF with if you don't mind, would you be willing to share your testimony with the fans?
Yeah, sure. So I think like a lot of people, I grew up in a Christian household. I was at church all the time. My parents didn't really allow us to not be at church. And as I kind of got older, I knew I wanted to follow Jesus, but I didn't know exactly what that would look like. And I got baptized pretty early in life and started following Jesus. And then as I kind of got older, actually started having some real problems, things that I wanted to chase other than God. And about the time I was in 7th grade, it was time to kill those things and repent and start following Jesus. I had some friends that I started talking to about that and what it actually looked like to kill sin, because that's what that's what following Jesus is about, is dying to self and killing sin. And so started working towards that as I kind of got older. Wanted to pursue ministry. I knew that when I was in high school, I was interested in doing ministry and started following and doing that. And that's eventually how I got to CWF and doing all kinds of things. Been all over the world. Have wanted to travel all over the place, going to different countries, and even considered wanting to live in Japan at one point in time and wrestle there. And here lately have started kind of, especially as we've moved into bivocational and wanting to continue working in ministry, but also knowing I need to pay my bills and eventually I want a family one day. So I started pursuing a career and developing a theology of work and what that should look like. Right. 1 Thessalonians 4 talks about living a quiet life, working with your hands so that you can do well with outsiders. Yeah, that's my dad right there. I'm a plumber now.
All right, there you go.
And so that's where I'm at now. Trying to live a quiet life, work with my hands, and live well with outsiders. And spend opportunities like this to tell people about Jesus and call people to repentance and following God.
Well, Mr. Cohen, you sound like you raised your son up well, and so
He did
Thank
all
you.
right. He did all
Thank
right.
you. Thank you. You're calling out your dad even. Man.
Uh,
So huge pop wrestling fans. This is Buzzard from CWF West Texas. There's also CWF Rockwell. If you can go on YouTube, I think you can check out CWF Rockwell and CWF West Texas. Check out their YouTube page, their matches. They put on a great show. It is, I call it old school wrestling, kind of, sort of, with the old school feel. There's the storytelling, everything out there, and in the end is something amazing. These guys get in the ring, they pull out the Bible, and they share their hearts with the fans that stay around. And then I think at the end, don't you guys pray for the fans that want to be prayed for?
yeah. We'll pray. We'll talk to people about what it means to follow Jesus and make sure they have a proper understanding of the gospel. That's at least what I do when I'm out there. I want to make sure that people understand that they're sinners, make sure that they know that Christ is Lord and they're going to have to answer to him one day, and make sure that they understand what it actually looks like to repent and believe the gospel, as Jesus says in Mark 1:15.
Awesome. And the night was awesome having you on here, Buzzard. Stay in the lobby as I close out the podcast. Huge Pop Wrestling Podcast. Thank you for joining us for this hour. Thank you, Buzzard. Thank you, CWF West Texas. I'm going to let my man Buzzard go. He's on the way to Bible study.
That's right. Yep. We got Bible study tonight.
So stay tuned. Watch more. Hit the follow button. Subscribe to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, so you can have more shows. Monday night's the show. It's the Wrestling with Purpose with CWF. Again, Buzzard, stay tuned. Stay close, okay?
I am the way, the truth, the light. Nobody comes to the Father except me.
Bible Club. Eternal life.
He is the way and he's Jesus Christ. Yeah. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. He is the way and he's Jesus Christ. Yeah. Nobody comes to the Father except through me.